I'm Allison LaForgia, managing editor of the content studio at HousingWire, and today I'm really excited to welcome two people from Ivory Innovations to talk about their 2025 Hack a House competition, which runs virtually from September 26th through the 27th, challenging college and graduate students nationwide to develop innovative solutions for America's housing affordability crisis in just 24 hours. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ian Cahoon, the Director of Innovations, and Jenna Louie, the Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer. Jenna, Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
I am really excited to talk to you guys. This is affordability is one of the most pressing issues facing Americans today. And I want to talk a little bit about why Ivory Innovations was founded and why this is such a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, Ivory Innovations was founded about 8 years ago. We're an academic center based at the University of Utah, but with a national reach. And really, our mission is to catalyze innovation in housing affordability. I think you can sum this up by saying we can't build the way we've always built and hope to get different results. The housing crisis that we have today has been decades in the making. And we know that we need to find new approaches in order to get us out of the situation that we've built for ourselves. One of the things that I love most about Hack a House is that we're challenging students, right? Students who are in university and the next generation to help solve this challenge that they uniquely face. We talk a lot about the people facing housing issues, and many of these folks working on the issue are themselves right, like in the industry, and that's great. We want all people solving this. We also want to bring the people who are most susceptible to actually the ills of the housing crisis, those that are graduating with student debt, those that are trying to find their first apartment that maybe in another 2-3 years or 5 years or 10 years are really going to have a challenge buying a house. We want to bring them into the solution and into the industry to be part of what we dream up and what comes next. And so that's really the basis of Hack a House, is how can we bring new ideas, a fresh perspective into what is by all means a very, very difficult set of issues.
So talk to me a little bit about how you think college students are uniquely positioned to present some fresh solutions and ideas. I will say for the HousingWire audience, this is different for us, and it's a really exciting, I think, opportunity to talk about their perspective.
So during the course of Hack a House, as we've done this competition, we've had about 1,600 students participate from over 150 universities. So we've been able to see a lot of perspectives and a lot of great ideas from many different types of students. It's not just a LIHTC competition that's targeting one aspect of the housing crisis, but is really looking for any perspective and any ideas and tying them to the current problems that both students will be facing as well as what we're facing right now.
So you just mentioned a pretty big number of schools. So talk to me about how the competition not only attracts students from top universities, but a whole range of students. How do you think that national scope helps contribute to the diversity of some of the solutions presented?
As students from different perspectives and different regions have different expectations of housing, right? If you're looking at small rural communities, they're going to have different expectations of housing and have different solutions for what works for them. Whereas if you have a student from New York, they're going to have a different expectation of housing, and there's going to be different solutions that they've seen and that they want to try to apply from their perspective. As you're able to combine these groups of students, you're able to start to get an idea of what are housing solutions that are not just area specific, but that can be applied across the nation.
That's fantastic. So I'm really curious about the idea of a 24-hour competition. What do you think this kind of ultra fast paced environment brings out in the innovation process?
One of the things that's best about the 24-hour competition, when we got this started about 8 years ago, it was really a test. It was to see how many students are curious about this, right? No one necessarily goes into college or university saying, I'm going to major in housing. That's not really a thing. They might say, I'm majoring in finance or in real estate or in information systems or in architecture or in business. And so bringing together a multidisciplinary set of students was really the first goal. And by making it a short competition, we were trying to lower barriers to entry. I think over the last 8 years, we've seen that having a shorter competition as opposed to something weeks long, like more like a design charrette that architecture students would be familiar with, that really short form competition allows students to iterate really, really rapidly and doesn't hold people back from working on kind of crazy ideas. There are a lot of past submissions that we've seen that, quite honestly, wouldn't hold water as a true business model. And that's fine, right? We don't expect anyone to come out of this with a fully baked, foundable startup after 24 hours. The whole idea is to bring people's energy and motivation and momentum to addressing this housing challenge. And so the first couple of hours of the 24 hours are really set aside for students to learn more about the issues. We have a whole bunch of industry experts, probably folks at the HousingWire community will know about if you're to look at our website. And those industry sessions and industry expert sessions are designed to help students better understand the issue. And then the next, let's say, 21 hours of the competition are really designed for students to kind of go wild and free and iterate on some of those ideas. And we've seen everything from new ideas around mass timber and students proposing how they might address supply chain issues to new concepts of how you can use technology to address the homelessness crisis to fully new policies proposed that city governments might adapt. And so there's a whole range of ideas that comes out of that really short form competition and leaving it really open-ended that we love because we're here for creativity and to engage that next generation. We're not necessarily here to say it has to be perfectly baked by the time you pitch it.
Well, I love the idea and the concept of it because I think college campuses are really meant to be a place where new ideas are forged and then those ideas are honed and maybe they turn into something absolutely brilliant. But you're sort of putting, I think, what this competition is so interesting to me about and what it captures is that you're putting all of these really bright, excited ideas and minds in a place where they can throw something on the board and say, okay, like maybe this will work. Maybe this has this application, and you have a whole range of different perspectives. So I'm so curious, what are some of the most exciting or even unexpected ideas that you've seen come out of the competition so far?
Yeah, a couple of them have been really, really fun. I'll say that over time, the two favorite that stick out to me for just how different they are. One is actually a company these days, so a group called KitSwitch that came out of some engineering students at Stanford in 2021. Of course, this was in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and they were thinking about what can we do to make housing more affordable, and adaptive reuse was a really big issue then, right? How can you convert maybe some of these unused office buildings into housing? They came up with a panelized solution for doing quick kitchen and bathroom modules that they actually founded a company upon graduating from their graduate program. And so they're doing awesome. It's kitswitch.com if you're curious. And then the other couple of ideas that I want to mention, we've seen everything from ADU financing using CRA, which, is impressive for a student group that didn't know anything about CRA coming into the competition 24 hours later, they're experts. That's a dream. Another idea was to take cruise ships back also during the COVID pandemic, and could you turn those into temporary housing? And again, this is a really interesting concept, right? In 24 hours, you would say, I don't know if that's actually going to work, but the creativity of students coming into the competition and saying, what do I know? What do I see around me? And what might I propose in order to think of new ideas? That's the dream that we have of bringing students in.
Ian, I want to tag you in. What have been some of your favorite or even exciting solutions that you've seen come out of the competition?
Yeah, the best thing is, we have 3 prompts that we do every year. And so historically, those have been around policy and regulatory reform, construction and design, and then finance. And so it's really interesting to get different approaches. I know when I was an undergrad, I actually competed in the construction and design category. And so my group proposed a home that was built to expand. So you're able to tie the utilities at the end and have separate entrances. So once a family, had more people in it or had more money, they were able to expand that home and use that first phase to rent it out to help cover some of those costs. So as a biased perspective, that was one of my favorite ideas. But as Jenna mentioned, everything from unique financing and shared equity models to new materials to policies to increase supply to promote new and first-time home buyer abilities and options.
So talk to me a little bit. I know that you mentioned, Jenna, that the competition's been around for approximately 8 years. So what are we excited about for this year's? What are we excited about for the 2025 version?
Well, the 2025 competition was amazing. We had hundreds of students participate. We gave out another several $1,000s in prize money, and we're inviting those category winners to participate with us for a grand prize at the Ivory Prize Summit held on October 29th in Utah, where we're going to be bringing national innovators and our students together for a day of talking about the best solutions that we've seen across the country to help solve the housing crisis. And I think that's what I would leave the Housing Wire audience with is really how can we not think in silos. That's really the core mission of Ivory Innovations is whether you're thinking about housing innovation, whether you're an industry professional that's already in the industry, or if you're a new student trying to get into it, how do we put those different groups together to be inspired by one another? And so at our summit, we'll be bringing together academics, experts, innovators, students, stakeholders, builders, you name it, to try to think of these new ideas. And by having those collisions, right, of people who don't necessarily always get together, I would say that's the real thing that always excites me about Hack a House this year, and particularly this year because we're going to have those students doing a grand prize pitch.
That is so exciting. So, to wrap up this interview, and I know that we might even have the opportunity to talk to one of the winners coming out of this year's competition. So, I'm very excited to get that on the books and to talk to some of these young, bright minds who are really have the potential to mix up some of the outcomes of the industry. And which I think is so funny because whenever we have some of these interviews, we talk about how people got into mortgage. Nobody actually means to get into mortgage. It's sort of like you fall into it accidentally at some point. So I think it's very interesting to hear that how some of the students come across the competition and how they are looking at solving different things because I think that's very emblematic or also seen pattern wise in the actual mortgage industry itself. But talking about the future, where do you see some of the biggest opportunities for innovating affordable housing solutions? And most importantly, how does Hack a House potentially contribute to them?
I think a big thing is these students are, as you mentioned at the beginning, they're going into these prompts or these problems without a lot of context. And so they don't have all these preset notions of this is why it doesn't work. And so instead of just assuming, oh, this doesn't work because X, Y, Z, they can actually re-ask those questions and say, hey, based on the technology that's advanced, why don't we do it this way? And part of that industry experts is to get some of that technical expertise of, hey, you're identifying the problems, you're asking the right questions, let's fill in a little bit of these gaps. But you're right. Why is it that way? Go and see what you can do to really solve this problem through that angle.
Well, Jenna, Ian, thank you so much for talking to me about Ivory Innovations and Hack a House 2025. I'm so excited to hear about some of the solutions that came out of this year's competition and to find out more about how those different winners potentially partner at the upcoming summit.
That's right. And for anyone listening, if you're curious to see what came out of this year's competition, you can visit us at hackahouse.org. We have all of the submissions this year, and we are thrilled to highlight those students and bring them into the industry and connect them with professionals who want to be part of that next generation making change.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And for our audience, we'll have all of the links that Jenna and Ian mentioned below this episode.